We will get started. So for everybody who's just joined us from the waiting room, good morning firstly to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So this is the 5th of 8 sessions taking place as part of our Careers Outside the Lab series, and that's running until tomorrow. So I am delighted this morning to be hosting and facilitating our session on recruitment, marketing and sales. So my name's Helen, I'm one of the careers consultants from the Careers Service. Before we get started properly, just a bit of sort of housekeeping, just to make you all aware. Firstly, the session is being recorded, so we just ask that if you don't wish to appear in the session recording, just make sure you turn your camera off. Now, this is a really fantastic opportunity for you to ask our 5 panelists who are all working in science recruitment, sales, marketing, business development roles, to ask them questions about their career history, about how they found opportunities, to ask them for insight into their current role and responsibilities. So as we are progressing through the session, please do ask questions in the chat box. So towards the end of the session, once all of our panelists have had the chance to speak, we'll be focusing on Q&A. So this is really your chance to ask any burning questions, and our panel have promised to be completely honest in their responses, so they're going to tell you the truth. So you know, anything that you think of throughout the session, please do put those questions in the chat box, and we'll come back to them towards the end of the session. Equally, if you would rather raise your hand and you'd rather ask your question directly to our panelists, you've obviously got the chance to do that as well. So if you prefer to unmute yourself and ask a question directly, please do raise your hand using the raise your hand function, obviously in Zoom, and you can ask that question directly as well. So the way that the session is going to work this morning, so we have, as I said, 5 panelists who are all working in science recruitment, sales, marketing roles. They are each going to give a 5-minute introduction to themselves. So once all of them have presented, what we'll then do is we'll open the floor for Q&A, and that will be the chance to ask questions for our panel. So here are our panel. So this is our fantastic panel who've given up their time to come and speak with us today. So firstly, without further ado, I will hand over to Alison Reed to give you all an overview of her role as a marketing executive. So over to you, Alison. I'll stop sharing my screen so you can share now.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. Can you see my screen okay? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so hi everyone. Yeah, as Helen introduced, I'm Alison. I work in the marketing team at Last Limited. And I've got 5 slides to answer the 5 questions that Helen had asked me to cover. I've got my stopwatch in the background to try and keep to time. So the first point Helen asked me to cover was my educational background, anything I did during university to build skills and experience. So like all of you, I went to Newcastle University. I studied chemistry with medicinal chemistry, achieving a 2-1 in that. Outside of more regular jobs, in terms of more academia experience, whilst I was at Newcastle, I was involved in giving tours of the chemistry department to prospective students. That was really my first insight into group presentation skills. I was given some key.
Ooh, it looks like we might have lost Alison. Alison, are you still there? Hello? Perhaps, I don't know, Andy, if you're able to unshare Alison's screen.
Yeah.
What we'll maybe do is we'll perhaps move on to our next panelist, and then it looks like Alison might have just lost connection. So hopefully she will come back in shortly. Yeah, so sorry about that, everyone. I think if that's okay with you, Graham, if we sort of switch over to you, and then we'll come back to Alison once she's hopefully come back into the session. So over to you, Graham, if you're ready.
Yeah, that's thrown me a little bit there. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, so just to give everyone a little bit of an understanding about who I am. My name's Graham Hankinson. I did a bachelor's degree in chemistry graduating in 2012. I actually got a third in my degree. I think partway through, I basically decided that the degree wasn't what I was wanting to do, and I kind of had a bit of a crisis of confidence, crisis of kind of, oh God, I've gone to uni, I've spent all this money doing something that I can't cut in the lab. What am I going to do? You know, it's not for me. I've made a huge mistake. I've ruined my life, all that sort of thing. I think I've actually probably spent more time at Newcastle Uni since I left than I did when I was there, because I think I just kind of totally switched off in my final year and decided that I wanted to pursue other avenues. Probably wasn't the most mature or intelligent thing to do at the time, but when you're 20 and you think you've made a mistake, it's just one of them things that sometimes happens. And I want to kind of let everybody know, if you don't achieve the grade you want to achieve, or you've not got a first class and everything's perfect, don't think for a second that means you can't have a successful career in this sector using skills that you have in other areas. If you can't do lab reports like I could, or analytical chemistry completely sends your head into a spin, then you can still get a really rewarding career. So when I graduated, I actually went to work for a company on the Team Valley in Gateshead called Pale & Test, who manufacture water treatment devices. So they make spectrophotometers, and they make the kind of reagents that interact with water to check effluent levels, chlorine levels, things like that. I did that for a year on a mat cover contract. Found that I had quite a knack for sales. I was very much a talkative kind of people person, and wanted to do that, and it made me feel good, because at least I was doing something that was adjacent to the degree that I decided to pursue. After that year, I was picked up by CY Partners. So I do scientific recruitment. So effectively, I'm a bridge between job seekers who look for roles in the science sector, so everything from chemicals, pharmaceuticals, biotech, med devices, everything like that. I'm a kind of bridge between you guys looking for work more in the lab, so kind of doing the thing that I decided not to do. I get the irony there, but that was kind of the way that my career has gone. So I've been doing this job for 7.5 years now, and I'm actually managing my own team within the business. We work with some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies on the planet, like GSK and AstraZeneca, as well as small kind of startup firms, some spin outs and everything from there. So in terms of recruitment as a job, it's definitely for people who have a drive to do things themselves and really build on relationships. If you're a somebody who's a little bit closed off, a little bit reserved, it might not be the right fit. You need to be quite outgoing, because it's a job where you definitely need to build connections and solve problems where you can. But it is, if you've got that desire, it's definitely a rewarding job. And I can't really knock the bonus structure either. When you do a good job, it's always nice to see kind of the work that you do actually given back in a kind of an immediate manner, not just like a pat on the head, thanks for all your work this year. You can actually see the efforts that you do rewarded financially. Again, I guess I'm a bit of a two-pronged approach on this call. I can definitely answer questions about recruitment as a job, but I'm also working for, like I say, a large amount of employers especially in the Northeast, who are looking for graduates in this in the science sector. So if anyone has any questions, anyone's on the fence about should I go into the lab, should I not, I'm kind of unsure, speak to me and I can give you kind of an honest answer as to both sides of things. What opportunities we've got, what that looks like, because I do understand that a lot of people they don't want to make a mistake when they graduate, or feel like they're going down the wrong path. And when you've been so kind of preoccupied in getting your actual degree, you sometimes haven't stopped to look out and go, okay, what happens after this 3 years or 4 years? So if anyone has any questions on that front, I'd be more than happy to answer them from someone who's got quite a lot of experience in helping people to find jobs and find careers that they find rewarding. So I guess that's a little bit of an overview of me. And yeah, I'll pass on to the next presenter.
That's great. Thanks, Graham. So our real Northeast recruitment guru. So get thinking of questions, and we can come to those towards the end of the session. So thank you, Graham. So moving on now, it looks like Alison still isn't back. So I think we'll move on to Hannah, who's going to tell you a little bit more about her graduate career so far at Croda. So over to you, Hannah. You might just need to unmute yourself, Hannah. I think maybe you're on mute.
Sorry, I keep doing that.
Perfect.
By now, working from home, wouldn't you? But clearly not. So yeah, just a little bit about me. I'm obviously a bit earlier on in my career than Graham is. So I graduated from Newcastle Uni in July 2019. So I'm a year and a half into my life at Croda. I did a MChem in chemistry at Newcastle, and I did an industrial training year as part of that. So I'll cover that in a second. But I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of Croda, because quite a lot of people haven't heard of Croda, but without Croda, quite a lot of the things that we all rely on wouldn't get made. So Croda is a company that make and sell specialty ingredients into all sorts of industries, and they basically make the active part of things that we use every day. So things like skin creams, we would make like the anti-wrinkle bit in it. We make the anti-fog additives that can go into like face shields. So obviously during COVID, that would have been an important thing. We've recently also been a part of the Pfizer vaccine. So Croda have a adjuvant in the Pfizer vaccine. So we've been working hard to obviously keep up with supply of our adjuvant for that. But yeah, basically we have this whole purpose around smart science to improve lives. And that's kind of what Croda is. We also have a massive thing about sustainability. So Croda have many a sustainability person within the company, because we really want to be climate, land and people positive by 2030. So just to give you an overview of kind of what Croda is and our kind of values and ethos and all that sort of thing. And this is kind of all the markets we serve. So kind of like I alluded to, we have things that go into personal care products. We have things that go into like your fabric conditioners and all that sort of thing. We obviously have healthcare, which is obviously with the Pfizer vaccine, things that go on our crops, and then things that go into cars and industrial applications, and kind of the smart materials is all about like this anti-fog, anti-static, all that sort of thing. So kind of all clever little ingredients that without we wouldn't live the life we kind of live as we do. So a little bit on career history for me. So like I said, I did a placement year as part of my degree, and I did that at Croda, and I was in their sun care synthesis and applications teams. So I was living in Liverpool, the job was in Cheshire, and it was all in a lab, and I was literally making the additives that go into these products. Then I absolutely loved Croda when I worked for them, came back to uni, and was like, I really want to go back. So I tried my hardest to get on the grad scheme, and thankfully I did. They wanted to have me back, which is always nice. So then for my first rotation, again, I was in the lab. So as part of the graduate scheme, you do 3 rotations. Sorry, I should probably just explain that. 3 9-month rotations. So the first one was in the lab, but I was this time working in the energy technologies and home care applications section of the business. I then decided during that rotation that I'd quite like to try something outside of the lab, because all the career stuff that I'd done so far was in the lab. So my second rotation, I was in personal care sales development. So basically I was doing a big project that was all about optimizing and improving a system that we have that tracks customer work requests, which is basically where customers come to us and say, can you help us kind of work with one of your products? So I was speaking to all different people around the business. It was a global team. My manager was in the US. I was obviously in the UK. It was very, very different to my first rotation, but I felt like I learned so much and realized actually not being in the lab, I think I prefer. So then that's what helped me decide what to do for my third rotation. and I've literally just started it. I'm still trying to find my feet, so I will be completely honest with you. I don't know how much I could tell you about what I'm going to be doing for the next 9 months. But it's in kind of digital sales and marketing. I'm shortly going to be moving to Sweden as and when Brexit and COVID and work permit allows, which is an amazing experience opportunity that I'm dead excited for. And basically I'll be kind of driving the digital transformation of Croda's Scandinavian business, and all about kind of growing our customer base and driving more people to the website and all these new skills that I've never learned before. So I'm going to be learning them on the job. And then just a few things I have on advice for you all, is that kind of when I was at uni, people who didn't want to work in a lab kind of ruled out working for any sort of like chemical company or science-based company. They kind of decided to go down maybe the finance route or that kind of thing, but you can still work for a chemical company or a science company, even if you don't want to be in the lab. And I think that's so important. Like, people don't realize that. And Croda specifically look for science-based degrees when they're recruiting salespeople or marketers, because you need that technical knowledge to be able to do the role. They can kind of teach you the sales skills or the marketing skills, but it's much more difficult to teach you the biology knowledge or the chemistry knowledge or that kind of thing. So there are a couple of things. And then just two other things that I'm literally doing right now to improve my knowledge of sales and marketing, and particularly the digital side of all this, because that's kind of where the industry is evolving to, much more digital platforms and stuff, is I'm currently doing the Google Digital Garage Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course. So it's a free course, it's 40 hours. It would look great on your CV if you guys would want to do it, if you're interested in that sort of thing. It's accredited by the Open University, you get a proper certificate and stuff. It would at an interview show that you are interested in marketing or that kind of thing. And then also Google Analytics is a massive thing, and there's courses available on that. So they're just two things that I thought, on a CV, if you could have the time to get them on, it would make you maybe stand out from the crowd and show that you are genuinely interested, even though you might not have the direct degree that they're looking for. So that's kind of me. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions later on in the session.
That's great, thank you, Hannah. And I think you made some really interesting points there about the fact that even if you don't want to go and work in a lab, there are loads and loads of opportunities and loads of different roles that you can investigate within science companies if you're keen to stay quite close to your science. So that was great, thank you. I can already see that there are quite a few questions in the chat, so please do keep them coming, and we'll get through them towards the end of the session. I'm now going to hand over to Natalie, who comes from a PhD background originally. So for any PhD students on here, I'm sure Natalie has got lots and lots of interesting things to say. So over to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Helen, and good morning, everyone. So I'm actually probably, I don't know, I'm looking around the room. I think I'm probably one of the oldest person on this line. But as Helen mentioned, I've got a PhD in chemistry. But I started, as you can probably tell, or maybe not by my accent, I'm originally from France. And I'm based in the Northeast now, but I've started with a chemistry degree from the University of Strasbourg, and then benefited from the Erasmus program and ended up in the UK to do my master's in chemistry. And following on to that, I got funding to do a PhD at the University of York, so not the Northeast, but kind of nearly the Northeast. And I kind of spent most of my career in the UK since then. So very standard, as I said, chemistry education, and like a lot of you probably thinking about that now, but I decided to first go for the standard career and look for a job in the lab, and I got a position to work as a bench chemist just before I submitted my PhD in Manchester, and I kind of followed that route. I didn't know. I think you're lucky in that sense that we didn't necessarily have the career advice and support you guys getting these days. And so I worked in the lab. I work for a small company, large company. I also work for AstraZeneca, which is obviously quite well known at the minute with the vaccine program. And then I've decided to move into a marketing role because, just not necessarily by chance, but there were rumors of redundancies, and that's something that, you know, touches a lot of people as well. And so I decided to look for another career, not by necessarily choice, but because I thought I had to look for something else, and I moved into marketing, and but still focusing on scientific product and services. And eventually, when I was sick of trying to convince or train the salespeople how to sell the product or the services we were developing, I decided to go into business development myself. So so I think in the you know, the main message is for me is whatever choice you make now is not necessarily final, and I think whatever you're going to do, you know, or even if you spend a couple of years in the lab and it's not necessarily, you know, the best job for you and you don't enjoy it, these are still experiences that are going to be very valuable, because nowadays I look after the European territory for a company based in Alnwick called Arkinova. So we do employ a lot of people, you know, from the lab to, you know, marketing and business development. And but everything you've learned, or, you know, in early, or I've learned in early career, is very useful now for me to sell those services and product, because I do understand my clients' needs. So, you know, look at it as you moving forward in life. Every experience is valuable. You know, even if you change your career, you can always use some of the skills that you gained to move you know, in another career. And I really enjoy my job because I do use my technical skills, and it gives you credibility as well when you sell, because they understand that they know that you understand their problem. You're not just trying to, you know, convince them to buy something based on pricing, etc. You really have this credibility. And yeah, so, and we to talk about, you know, Arkinova as a company. So we're based in the Northeast. We're recruiting heavily, so do feel free to reach out either directly or use some of the, you know, recruitment agencies like Graham. They can advise you on what would be the best role for you. But to give you an idea, we've started in 2016 with 50 employees, and we're 170 now, and we've recruited quite a lot of people from, you know, universities in the Northeast. So do keep in touch. And also, I think in general, you know, you see my name, I'm on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out. I'm mentoring a few early graduate students as well on, you know, advising or just sharing best practice. So feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help answer any question either today or offline. So I think that gives a bit of a flavor of my tumultuous career over the last few years. But yeah, so, and yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Natalie. And I think, you know, you made some really, really interesting points, I think, about the credibility of being able to stand in front of somebody and sell a product or a service, and to feel confident that your scientific knowledge has given you good grounding there. I think, again, this is why science companies want people with science backgrounds, even if you're not necessarily going to be working in a lab-based role. So fantastic point there. I can see that Alison has managed to rejoin us. I think what we'll do, Alison, just to give you a bit of time to kind of get ready, I think we'll hand over to Daisy perhaps next, and then we'll finish with you, Alison, just to finish off. Got a thumbs up, so that's all good. So Daisy, whenever you're ready, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Helen. So hi everyone. My name is Daisy Hughes, as you can see from the screen, and I'm currently a oncology marketing graduate working at Bayer. So if I just wind back, as Helen did mention, I'm also a chemistry graduate from Newcastle Uni. So I think I'm actually the youngest, just by a year from Hannah. So I just graduated my MChem in 2020. So yeah, I did the 4-year course at Newcastle University, including the industrial training year. And I did my industrial training year, actually, if I'm being completely honest, so when I started university, kind of, I guess, similar to Graham, first year, I was like really enjoying it. Second year, I was having some doubts. I wasn't too sure how much I was enjoying my course. But second year was also the time, as if anybody has went through it or is currently doing it, is kind of the time where if you are looking to do an industrial placement year, you really need to sort of get the applications in quite early. And I was lucky enough that I'd confirmed my industrial placement year, I think before Christmas of second year, and that really gave me the motivation to push forward. I was really excited about it. So I went to work for GSK and I did a medical affairs role, which, to be honest, I wasn't overly sure what that really entailed at the time of applying, but personally, I actually knew from very early on, probably in first year, that I wasn't looking for a career in the lab. So when I was looking for industrial placements, I was looking just solely at roles that didn't involve any kind of lab work. And I don't know, I guess it's always stuck in my head because when I was searching for these placements, and this would apply to jobs as well, I was kind of panicking in the sense where I wasn't sure what placements I'd actually be allowed to do in terms of the school actually allowing me. And Liaisons was actually my tutor, and I remember going to his office and being like, I'm seeing all these roles, like I don't know what I'm going to do. And he just said to me, like, look, Daisy, he was like, if you could do this role as a chemistry graduate, I'm more than happy for you to do it as a placement. So that really helped me in when I was searching, because at the end of the day, chemistry graduates do have a lot of opportunities. And I guess, you know, that's why we're all here discussing the kinds of opportunities that we do have. So when I went to work at GSK, I was based in Weybridge down in Surrey. I was actually in their consumer healthcare department, and I was working in oral care, which again, when I didn't actually know it was going to be in oral care when I went for the role. And when they told me, I was a bit like, oh, so I'm going to be working on toothpaste for a whole year. Like, it was a bit of a funny one. I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be good. But anyway, I stuck with it. And honestly, it was a fantastic year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it was actually at my placement year in medical affairs, which, just for anybody that's not too familiar with that role. So basically, if you imagine anytime you buy any kind of product, in toothpaste included, it'll have, you know, things and information written on the box, on the leaflet inside, and everything that's written on there has to be approved from a medical perspective. So that means, you know, we couldn't write this is the best toothpaste in the world without any substantiation in clinical trials to back that up. So my role in medical affairs is kind of matching the clinical trial evidence and kind of liaising with marketing and making like nice claims about the product that also meets the medical standards. But because of the office I was based in, I was actually working at a global level. So I worked really closely with the marketing team, the legal team. And it was actually during that year when I really sort of saw the marketing side, and I was like, you know, I think that's potentially where I'd like to head. So for my final month at GSK, I arranged it with my manager and moved into the global marketing team. So that was fantastic, even though it was only a short 4 weeks. By that time, I'd made really good relationships with people who I was working with, and I was given a lot of responsibility and opportunities in that month. So when I left GSK, I was actually really sad to leave. And I guess similar to Hannah, I kind of left feeling like, you know, I really want to go back to GSK. I was kind of like, this is it. Like, that's the only place I want to be. I've loved my industrial year. So come sort of third year, going into fourth year, I was primarily applying to GSK. I went for their scheme, which is the FLP, which, you know, if anybody's done any research, it's the Future Leaders Programme. It's a rotational scheme. And they had one which is in, I think it's just called commercial. So you go into marketing, you do a rotation in sales, and then you do a third rotation, which you can kind of choose yourself. And I did go down to London for the assessment centre at the start of fourth year, and I actually didn't get the role. So I was devastated. I was absolutely gutted. And, you know, my manager who I worked for in my placement year was really supportive and nice about it. But it wasn't them who was interviewing me. It was a completely different office. I was being interviewed by people that didn't know me. I'd never visited there really on my industrial placement year. So moving forward, it's kind of when I started to search for jobs, and I came across the job at Bayer, which is oncology marketing. So it really caught my eye because obviously I wanted to go into marketing, and I feel like oncology is such a pressing therapy area as a whole to go into. So I was really excited when I managed to get this role back in June, I believe, in 2020. I knew I'd confirmed the role. So at Bayer, I am obviously a marketing graduate, like I said, but I'm aligned with their prostate cancer franchise. So I work on just two drugs specifically. And I guess if I was going to give you advice from what I now know working in pharmaceuticals, because I think that's a big difference to highlight. I've moved from consumer healthcare, now I'm in pharmaceuticals. Is that's a good decision to kind of think about. So consumer, if you're going to do marketing, is like, thinking of TV adverts, grocery adverts, in pharmacy adverts, things like that. So kind of promoting to the public, where what I do now in Bayer is solely promoting to healthcare professionals. You can't promote to the public at all, so that's like a big difference. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, if potentially, obviously, you know about the marketing roles, you know about the sales roles, there's also in companies like Bayer, you have sales reps that you think of, but if you're someone who's thinking, I would quite like to be a sales rep, but I'm not sure if it's too commercialized for me, there's also roles called, in Bayer, they call them medical science liaisons. So that is similar to a sales rep, but instead of you going to promote to the doctor, it's when doctors contact us and say, hey, we're interested in knowing information about your drug. Can you please send in a medical rep? So yeah, I thought I'd kind of bring that up as another alternative role. But yeah, if you've got any questions about sales, marketing, anything in terms of, like, I guess, big corporate companies, I'd be more than happy to answer them, and anything about the application process as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Daisy. And I think, again, it's thank you for being honest about, the fact that you didn't get into the graduate role at GSK. And I think, this is proof right in front of us that, keep going, and you will, find things if you're applying for things at the moment and being unsuccessful. Obviously get support from the career service, bit of a plug there, but keep going, and you will find things. And I think as well, it shows that there are, perhaps pharmaceutical companies, a lot of students perhaps amongst us today probably know about the Pfizers and the AstraZenecas and the GSKs, but there are lots and lots of other pharma companies as well, some of which are based in the Northeast, which are recruiting science graduates as well. So thanks, Daisy, that was fantastic. So moving on now to our final guest speaker. So I'm going to hand over now to Alison Reed. So sorry about the technical difficulties that we had there, but Ali is back and with us now. So Alison, would you like me to share my screen with your slides? Is that easier?
Yeah, if that's okay, that would be great.
Course.
I'm joining on my phone, so hopefully it'll be okay. We've had an internet outage in the building, but yeah, any trouble, let me know. So I think I just got to the next slide, which I think you might have heard. So I was saying, similar to everyone here, I studied at Newcastle University, then did a placement at Leeds University within the medicinal chemistry department between my second and third year. And then in terms of further education, recently I completed the Chartered Institute of Marketing. CIM is the Chartered Institute for Marketing's the governing bodies level 4 in professional marketing, and received a distinction in that. So that was just last year, and yeah, quite exciting. So next slide, please, Helen. So in terms of what led me to pursue a non-lab based career, so I realised sort of during the duration of my degree that I was most interested in the bigger picture of science progression. So I particularly enjoyed the medicinal chemistry module, where I learned about, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, or how has that already been solved. I really enjoyed learning about that, but especially from my summer placement, although it was very interesting, I realised that day-to-day life just wasn't quite for me. But I was really interested in involving science in my career, obviously using my chemistry and science background. I realised that I wanted to work collaboratively with people. So I'm sure all of you in your degrees currently have modules which are collaborative. We had a group module at the time when I studied chemistry, and the group grade was either inflated or deflated depending on peer reviews. And having enjoyed that and then done quite well within that module, I realised that was something that I was keen to take into my career. And the final point I was interested in was business. So I kind of knew that I wanted to cover those 3 points, but I really wasn't sure how initially. So if we just go to the next slide. Thank you. So in terms of my career history to date, I created a quick timeline, and I'm glad you can see my slides, so I don't have to just talk this through. But you can see I graduated in 2013. I had a couple of years where I was trying to find my feet. So I did a customer service sales role, I did telephone researcher, a market research agency, and I did scientific recruitment for a while. Then I heard about LASA and got a job there in 2015. And I was actually contacted by a recruiter in relation to LASA. I'd never heard of them before. And then they were a company in Leeds that was, you know, essentially what I wanted to do, science but out of a lab. And if you just click again, Helen, I've got a quick overview of what LASA is, but essentially it's a not-for-profit organisation that looks at streamlining drug development through producing software and data sharing initiatives. And in 2020, I then moved internally to the marketing team. So sales and marketing sit within the same function, especially in many organisations, but particularly in the structure at LASA. And so I'd already worked closely with the marketing team for a long time before deciding to make that move. And within the same function, there are two other teams at LASA, so account management and global alliances. And account management, they support our existing members in sort of training and looking for further opportunities. And we actually have a role there that's just been advertised this week. So if you have a look on LASA's website, it's just lasalimited.org. If you're interested, you'll be able to find some more detail there. And we've just hired as well someone from a chemistry graduate from Newcastle University to start in our marketing team in April as well. So if we just go to the next slide, please. So because I've worked in both sales and marketing, I thought it might be useful for me to just give a quick overview of what my main focus was in both of these roles. So in sales, my main focus was to establish mutually beneficial relationships. Obviously, that's really important that in sales, you know, I think a lot of maybe how it's portrayed is, you know, you need to go out and you must make the sale because you've got a number that you need to meet. But, you know, particularly in areas such as LASA, where it's very complex, it's much more consultative, the sales process. So it really is about forming relationships with organizations where both parties are satisfied, and that will be a better relationship going forward. So that was my key focus. And to do that, I traveled globally to deliver sales pitches, so predominantly America and Europe, but also Brazil, and colleagues go to India as well. In some markets, we use distributors, so like China, Japan and Korea, for example. I obviously also was then involved in negotiating sales terms and legal terms. So once you've made a sale, you know, especially with software, there's a lot of intellectual property that needs to be protected. So yeah, that was a key responsibility as well. And then over the years, I went from mentoring to also having some line management responsibilities within that role as well. And then in marketing, as I mentioned, still within the same umbrella, but my focus here is really to position LASA as a thought leader within the pharmaceutical industry, to create strategic promotional plans, so for products / brands, so a little bit like what Daisy spoke about, in terms of looking at where you are with a certain product and looking at where you want to be, and then creating content in relation to those objectives, and then distributing that. And then the final point is measuring that. So obviously you might choose to share content. So by content, I mean things like infographics, blogs, it could even be webinars, for example. You then communicate those through email, social media, both organic and paid media. And then there's lots of data which you can get from that information. So it's a bit like a lab report in any scientific discipline, where you set out some objectives, you do what you plan to do, you get the data back, and then you see, have we met those objectives? How can we improve that going forward? Okay, next slide, please. So finally, and I've missed obviously everyone else's advice, so I apologise if this is a little bit repetitive. But the main things I would say are try not to be overwhelmed if you feel that you don't have loads of relevant experience to the job that you're applying for. I would say any work experience is valuable. So whatever it is that you do, think about how you can make a difference in that role. And then when you apply for a job, see if you can relate any of your success to desired candidate skills. Connect with people on LinkedIn. So if you see someone with a job that you would like to have in the future, reach out to them, tell them that, you know, you'd really appreciate maybe a chat, or you could even just message and ask, you know, what skills they have, and then think about how you could go about getting those skills. And finally, I'd say try and learn about the industry. So a way to do this is through relevant webinars. Obviously, you don't have to be employed to do that. You can just go to, so I've put the link here on this slide. This is a good place to get free webinars on the topic of marketing. And you know, if you do that, make sure you tell people in an interview, and most importantly, tell them what you've learned from that. That will definitely really impress people to see that even if you don't have, you know, direct experience, you have a real interest in the area. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Obviously, very happy to answer any questions in the Q&A session. And my LinkedIn profile is on the Newcastle Uni page, so feel free to connect, and I'm happy to answer any questions later as well.
Great, thank you, Alison. So that you've met all of our panel then now. So the rest of the session, we are just going to open the floor for Q&A. So I can see that we've already got quite a number of questions in the Q&A already, which is great. So I'll maybe start from the top. So we have one student who's asking a question specifically to Graham, but actually I think perhaps you know, it would be interesting for a few of you to pitch in here. So Graham, in your experience, what sort of transferable skills does a science degree give graduates who are looking to go into, you know, non-academic roles, perhaps non-lab based roles as well?
To be honest, I think this was probably answered by Hannah and Natalie as well, with regards to, like, you know, if you have a company that has a job but they make a certain product or they're in a certain sector, the fact that you can understand and apply what they do before you've even gone into that department makes life so much easier. I mean, I mentioned before when I worked at Pale and Test for a year, you know, they made spectrophotometers, but there was people there who worked that didn't understand what that was, and, you know, couldn't actually, you know, pronounce some of the names of the tests and things like that, didn't understand what the difference between organic and inorganic chemistry was. So, you know, if you're starting with any kind of innate technical knowledge, you can apply that into any sector, and it makes you much more respected. And, you know, I think it was Natalie that says, you know, when you're trying to sell things to people, when you're trying to kind of engage in business, coming from a place of understanding what their problems are, what their needs are, is massively helpful. You know, from recruitment and sales to anything, it massively helps. So, you know, I'd always say try and look at something where your degree or your educational background is a benefit to you, rather than, you know, like something where you're going in against people from any discipline and it's kind of a free-for-all.
Thank you. And one question for Hannah, just a little bit about your placement. I suppose we've probably got, for some background, we've probably got some students who are in their first year and second year thinking about placements, applying for placements at the moment. So, you know, what sort of skills do you think you gained from your placement at Croda that enabled you to secure your permanent role? And I suppose there's a bit of an addition to that question. Are you on the grad scheme at Croda with others who didn't necessarily do a placement during their second year?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. My placement year, I went into the placement year thinking I really want to learn more about the personal care industry, because I really see me using my chemistry to do basically play with makeup. That was basically my aim when going to my placement year, and that's what I did. I made sun creams and I made foundations and all that sort of thing, and it was fab. But the more that I learned from that was, I didn't really necessarily need the skills that I'd learned in my chemistry degree to do the science I was doing on placement year. It helped, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't doing like NMR and all the other techniques that you might use learn at uni. I was learning about formulating and emulsions and dispersions and all these sort of things that I didn't learn at uni. But the other things that I learned was even just like meeting etiquette and meeting people and talking to people. You don't learn that at uni. Without me doing that placement year, I wouldn't have understood just how quite a big company like Croda works, and obviously we work globally and all those sorts of things. So there's so many other skills that you don't even realise you're learning. But actually, when I was applying for grad schemes and stuff like that, it's just having that business awareness that definitely helps as well. And then in terms of other people on my grad scheme, most of us did have placement years, and I think that's just because you become more of a rounded individual who understands what you can contribute to a business and things like that. Like, I was the only one that had come from Croda, but there was people who had done a placement year at like Unilever or Reckitt Benckiser or people like that. And honestly, I can't recommend doing a placement year enough. Even if there's another question that's a bit further down that I might just pick up on now, even if that placement year isn't directly signed, like even if you're not in a lab, you can definitely do that as part of your degree. The reason why I had to be in a lab for mine was because I was on the MChem and I needed my placement year to count towards my degree. But you can be on the bachelor's degree, bachelor's of science degree, and that your placement year can be completely different. It doesn't have to be chemistry related at all, or biology related, or whatever your degree's in. It can be anything. But just having that experience when you're applying for jobs, it's so much easier because you can tangibly talk about what you've done in a company rather than being like kind of trying to pull things out of what you've done at uni or that sort of thing. So hopefully that answers that question as well.
Definitely does. Thank you.
Sorry, if I can just pick up
Sure.
on that as well. From a recruitment point of view, I absolutely agree 100% with everything Hannah said there. An interview process, when you're coming into, you're coming into job market with very limited experience, you'll be asked, more circumstantial and more kind of like practical questions rather than getting into the nitty-gritty about your like technical knowledge. So you'll be asked things like, give us an opportunity, give us an example of when you've solved a problem. If you've done a placement, you've got so much more to draw on in those interviews that stand you above the crowd. So I would absolutely 100% recommend a placement year as well if you can get it, just because it's not just about the experience you get, it's about what it gives you as a rounded person. So I can't, from a recruitment perspective, I can't support that enough.
Great, thank you. And Graham, just two questions. I'll just maybe lump them together just for you before moving on. So we have an international student who's asking about sort of prospects for international students who are looking for work within science companies in the Northeast. And we have another student who's asking specifically more about sustainability. And, is it possible to go into a job based around sustainability, with a current degree? And, are you aware of kind of many opportunities, within sustainability and sort of roles within perhaps the Northeast specifically?
So I guess I'll answer the question about international students at the minute. Obviously, it is quite a difficult time for, I think Hannah will say as well, even going to Sweden, like at the minute, it's completely up in the air what the immigration process is for people from the EU as well. I mean, companies themselves, because the guidance has been unclear from the government, there's a lot of our clients who don't even know what they need to fill in, what they need to do to kind of hire someone who is an EU national at the minute. So it's a bit of a shaky ground at the moment. I'd say, obviously, if you're coming from a non-EU perspective, from further away, Asia or the US or anywhere like that, a lot of the smaller companies struggle to be able to offer visa sponsorship because they have to kind of liaise quite heavily with the Home Office to be able to even offer that. So my advice would be target the larger firms who already have the infrastructure to be able to offer visa sponsorship. Go through the best channels for grad schemes, the Future Leaders program for GSK, things like that, because they're big enough global organizations to have where nationality isn't necessarily too much of a hurdle for them to overcome, whereas the smaller firms and the kind of spin outs and things like that, they can find it quite difficult to navigate that, and it's a massive issue for them. So my advice would be aim for the biggest kind of corporate ones first, because they're the easiest ones to interact with, and then you take it from there. But again, it is difficult to navigate when you've been at uni and suddenly you're told, oh, you need this visa, or you need this form, or you need something like that. So I would say speak to the careers team, and then look at kind of big corporations, because they do have set things in place.
I think maybe just to add to what Graham said, if you're currently an international student and you're due to graduate from summer 2021 or later, you have got the graduate route visa as well that has recently sort of come into being. So from the 1st of July, you're able to apply for a 2-year graduate visa, which doesn't require employer sponsorship. So again, this could be a really good option if you're thinking about a role within particularly smaller companies who maybe haven't had a history of offering that sponsorship. The only thing that I would say there is that, as Graham sort of alluded to, with Brexit and COVID, there's a lot going on for employers at the moment. So I would say it's sort of going to be your responsibility to make sure that you educate employers about your visa status and the fact that if you're able to secure that graduate visa, that you aren't going to require that sponsorship. It might just take a bit of time for employers to really sort of wise up to this. But obviously we can support you and give you advice on that as well.
Yeah, I would add as well, if you do have that visa, you do have the right to work in the UK, put it on your CV, because there are times where you might get overlooked because it looks like you don't have the right to work, you've just come over here to study, all your kind of schooling and things like that are overseas. Sometimes employers won't spend too long looking at CVs, and they will take the path of least resistance, which is just to go, oh, I don't want to kind of get into a difficult conversation if this person can't work, so I'll discount the CV. It isn't best practice, but I'll be lying if I said that didn't happen. So, if you put it in big letters, yeah, I can work in the UK, I don't need sponsorship, I'm not going to cost you any extra money, that'll just help to kind of stop you getting ruled out of processes for a stupid reason. But yeah, that would be some advice from me. The second question about sustainability, I think again that's about educating yourself on what companies do what. That if you look at companies that will be making things like sustainable batteries, or in the energy sector for solar or wind or things like that, that is something to look at. There's a lot of companies where internally they're driving down sustainability. There's clients of mine that are chemical manufacturers that are looking to be carbon neutral by 2030, things like that. They're doing internal processes, but it's from people who are in different roles, project managing something that's a company-wide project. Obviously, if you're looking for somebody that is specifically manufacturing products and technology to kind of sell as sustainable, then you need to find out who those companies are. Off the top of my head, there's a couple I can think of. That there's some biomass facilities, and there's some some energy companies that I could potentially think of in the Northeast, but you just need to kind of do a bit of digging. A lot of these firms tend to be on the smaller side because their product is more niche, it's more bespoke, it's looking at a particular issue that might be relevant to a certain industry or a certain sector of people rather than a global problem. But that's something that I would say, definitely look into it, but it'll take some investigation from yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Graham.
Can I just add on that, Helen? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
We at Croda have a massive sustainability team, and people within each team is about sustainability because it's such a massive thing for Croda. We've got goals everywhere. Literally, my whole life revolves around sustainability at the moment. So yeah, think about companies, because every company is trying to move along that way. Like, I'm literally just looking on Croda's current vacancy site, and there is a group sustainability specialist role, which I'm looking at the essentials, and someone who can prove that they have a passion for sustainability, maybe has done like if you can get some work experience or something like that, that role would be open to you. That there are companies who want that, and Croda want more sustainability people because it's just a massive thing, and we aren't going to hit all the targets we want to hit without that sort of thing. So yeah, sustainability is massive. So if you're interested in it, pursue it.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm conscious of time. It's coming up to the end of the session. We still have a couple of questions left. Can I just check with our panelists? Is everyone okay to stay for another couple of minutes? Is that okay? Good stuff. We'll try and get through these as quickly as possible. I think a couple of questions that have come in and that are quite similar, actually. I think obviously because today we have a panel of chemistry graduates and people from chemistry related backgrounds, I think maybe a couple of concerns from students about the fact that the roles you're in, do these apply to students from other scientific disciplines as well? So for instance, biology, biomedical sciences. You're all nodding. Anyone want to just kind of say something briefly here?
I might take that if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't think, the degree really matters. I think it's, if it's specific to, or the company specific to or applicable to your degree, then yes, you know, if you studied, I don't know, about, you know, the natural product synthesis or pharmaceuticals, and you were applying for pharmaceutical, maybe. But I think from a business development perspective, I think it's if you have a technical brain and you understand technical subjects, you will learn, because we will provide all the training that is required for those sales, because you can't be expert in everything. For example, I'm a chemist. We sell bioanalytical service, we sell clinical services, we sell a radio labeling, formulation development. These are things I'm not trained in, but you kind of, you know, get the right training. But I think the key skill you gain in a scientific degree is problem solving. And in all of those roles, you are exposed to trying to solve problem on a daily basis. And if your gear is, you know, trained in solving problem, you will tackle those problems far easier than people that don't have a technical brain, as I like to call them. So no, I wouldn't, you know, as I said, unless your skills are specific for that company. If you're just looking for a, you know, marketing or technical or sales role, I don't think you need to worry about the kind of degree or technical degree you have.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm moving on just very quickly, conscious of time, as I said. Great question from Joe, who's asking about what is job security like in your field? Is there a lot of targets involved in terms of the roles that you do when you're working in sales and marketing? Are they very target driven? If I could maybe just ask a couple of you to just jump in here.
Sorry, I mean, I can take it from a marketing perspective. Definitely not in marketing. Obviously, as a company, we have goals, we have targets, but you've got to remember these, you know, these companies are very much aware of their surroundings, and some things can't be predicted. That'll either increase or decrease sales. As far as I'm aware as well, for the sales force, yes, they do have targets, but it's not like if you miss your target this month, you're going to lose your job. It's not that at all. You're striving towards it. It might be if you hit target, you might get a bonus. There's definitely incentives in place, but yeah, like I said, companies are very realistic. It's not always the fault of the sales team. The environment in the economic environment is always changing, especially in pharmaceuticals and consumer healthcare, and especially considering the climate right now with COVID-19. It's just so unpredictable. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's anything to stress about. Kind of touching to what Graham sort of mentioned earlier, I think if you are very passionate about targets, and yeah, recruitment or sales is definitely a good road to go down, but it's not the be all and end all in terms of targets.
Thank you. And maybe just another quick question I think that came through for you, Daisy. Thinking about your placement when you're applying for placements, how do you think, you know, your CV gave you an advantage? What kind of things were you pushing on your CV to perhaps give you an advantage in the application process?
Yeah, no, I'll actually kind of cover this in terms of industrial placement and grad jobs, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're being realistic, there is literally thousands of students coming out of uni with science degrees and good science degrees from good universities. Not discrediting your degree at all, but you know, it is very competitive. For me, I've found in both application processes at both stages, you know, I didn't go ahead and apply for like 50 different jobs. I very much researched where I wanted to be, and I made sure that that research came through in my application. So that doesn't just mean, you know, seeing a job, thinking you like it, kind of looking at the first page of their website. I'd recommend for any company you're going to apply to, you need to look at their, they can be called like core values, or like their, you know, like company ethos, anything like that. Like really research into the company, see what they've been doing recently and push that across. Like, you know, say why you're passionate about that. You can say things like, you know, your personal core values align with the company's core values, and then go on to give examples and draw on your experience. I always find that's worked best for me. And on top of that, in terms of interviewing or anything like that, is just be very much yourself, which I know is really hard because everyone gets really nervous, but it's important that employers kind of can see you for who you are. And if you're coming across, even though an experience to you might not seem amazing, if you can draw on, you know, if you've worked at a summer camp or done a summer job and you've had a customer interaction that was a little bit difficult, it's more the way you articulate it to them and then link it back to how you solving that problem shows you have the skills that they're looking for. That's really the most important. So I'd say the job description is literally your best friend. Like, go through it, highlight it, annotate it, and put anything you think that you've got that's relevant to anything on the job description down, and make sure you push that across in the interview.
Thanks, Daisy. And I think, you know, to add to that, come and get support from the career service. We can give you feedback on all of this kind of stuff. 2 really quick questions, and then I promise we are ready to wrap up. So, Graham, super quick question from Elliot. Do employers tend to look for graduates who've immediately come from their degree, or, you know, what is their feeling if you've maybe taken time off to pursue other interests, if you've done a gap year, perhaps something like that? How do employers feel about that?
I mean, personally, I'd always say that the first couple of years after you graduate are the most important to make sure you kind of solidify what you've done at uni with getting some work experience under your belt. Pretty much exactly what, building on what Daisy said there. Like, if you go and ask somebody what they did 2 years ago or 3 years ago to kind of come across in an interview like that, it's going to be harder to kind of remember and draw on. It's always good to kind of get in when it's fresh and there's no kind of, you know, you're trying to minimize an employer discounting you for one reason or another. And if the one reason is this person left in June this year, it's all fresh, it's all right there, and this person did whatever for 2 years and can't recall it as much, you're going to struggle. That would be, you know, it just be, you know, that would just be the way it is, really. So I'd always say, if you're going to go away and do something else, really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Is it because you just feel a bit burnt out from uni? Is it because, you know, you want to do something else specifically? Like, really think it through. I mean, the amount of people I've seen that have gone to do a PGCE just because they don't feel like they're ready to leave university, realize they hate teaching, and then struggle to find a job in industry when it would have been really easy for them 18 months before. That happens more often than you could imagine. So really think about what you're doing and try and make sure you're doing things for the right reasons. I'd say if you took 4 to 6 months off to do traveling or something like that, that's probably the kind of maximum amount of time I would say to do. Don't take kind of 2-3 years off doing something and then expect to just kind of waltz back into an industry and pick a job up straight away. I think you need to be a bit more focused on, okay, this is right here now, the opportunities are here, let's make the most of it while I've got no strings attached, and, you know, I can you know, find what suits me.
Thank you. And super quick question for all of our panelists, and I suspect I know what the answer is going to be here, but quick question for everyone. So, based on your prior experiences, are you glad that you left university when you did? For those of you who maybe didn't go off and do a master's or a PhD, etc., are you glad you didn't do that? And I guess, Natalie, as somebody who obviously has a PhD, are you glad that you decided to go into industry after your PhD?
Yes, I did. I think I was, I'll be completely honest, I was attracted by the money, you know, after being a student and not have much money, you know, having a job in industry was obviously, you know, you had a salary, you know, you get, you know, set in life and start to plan. So yeah, no, definitely. But having said that, you know, if you want to leave early, I think if you've got a good reason and if you enter the job market before a PhD, this is not an issue. You know, it's still experience. You know, it's you know, sometimes you end up with a PhD going into a company, and you're competing with people that have you know, graduated before you, or their undergraduate studied, but they already have 2 years experience or 3 years experience ahead of them. So there's a balance. You know, not one is necessarily better than the other. As long as you've got something, you know, experience in the meantime that could give you the edge.
Yeah, I'd back that up as well. I always say to people, if you're going to do a PhD, 1, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and 2, make sure that whatever you're focusing on, someone's going to pay you for that experience at the end of it. Now, I've seen some PhDs that are very niche, and there's like 2 or 3 companies globally that actually need that expertise, and then people go, why can't I get a job in Newcastle? So, well, because you didn't really think about kind of the long term of it. So always, like you say, make sure someone's going to pay you for your expertise. To be honest, personally, I don't think I had a choice. The uni with the way my course went, I think I had to leave. But yeah, what I will say is, just make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons, and you're opening more doors and you're closing with extra experience, because it's not always the case of that. You might open some higher level opportunities, but you also close off certain sectors and certain opportunities the more specialized you get with your educational background.
Thank you. So I think we'll leave it there. So before we finish, just a little bit of feedback I just want to get from students. But before we do that, just I think we want to give you all a virtual round of applause for all of our panelists this morning. You've been fantastic, and I think the insight that you've shared would have been so useful for all of the students that have joined us this morning. So thank you very much. For students, just before we go, bear with me one sec. No, that's not working. I can do it without slides, it's fine. For students who've joined us, please do put some feedback in the chat box if you're able to, particularly those of you who've maybe signed up to a number of these sessions this week. I can see lots of familiar names. Let us know how you're finding these sessions, if you're finding them useful, what's particularly useful about them. I'm just going to launch a quick poll before we finish. We'd just like to get your feedback really on today's session. While you're taking the time to fill in that feedback form, just to let you know that we've got a couple more events taking place tomorrow, so legal services and then government and policy. So do have a look at the career service website and sign up for those if you're interested. And equally, if you need our help, if you're unsure what to do after you've finished, if you're looking for placements and you're getting stuck, if you have an application that you're making, you want feedback on it, if you've got an interview coming up, you want interview coaching, all of that kind of thing we can help you with at the career service. So just get in touch with us, log into My Career through your student account. You can book appointments with us at a time that suits you. So thank you so much for everyone who's joined, and sorry we ran over slightly for our panelists. Hope we're not running into your lunch hour too much. So I'll end the poll now. That's great. Thank you very much. If I can maybe just ask panelists to just stick around for a minute once we've finished. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed it, everyone. Thank you.